MP3 archives at the conclusion. Well, without further ado, let me get our guest on. Steve, do I have you on board?
Yes, I'm here, and Tom is here also, and we're excited. Both Tom and I have been communicating back and forth by email. And ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to start kind of in reverse. We're going to bring you from the present, then take you to the past over the next couple hours. Now, Tom is obviously no stranger to the discussion. He and I consistently have, I would say, been breaking the news of where humanity is heading and has been geared to go, just as in the days of Noah. Tom is obviously the author of Forbidden Gates, Apollyon Rising 2012, Nephilim Stargates, and he's absolutely a cornucopia of knowledge. I consider him the closest thing I know to the walking encyclopedia of what I would call ancient Americana and ancient world history, and it's a delight to be on with him tonight. Now, tonight we're going to start out with the fact that in Daniel chapter 12, there's a wonderful prophecy given to Daniel by an angel of the Lord. And it's talking about the things that are going to take place and that it's going to be such a difficult time on earth, to quote, such as never was since there was a nation even at the same time. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered, talking about Daniel's, everyone that shall be found written in the book of life. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Now, it is my contention and Tom's contention simultaneously, concurrently, and in both the way we both write, that we are at that time. There are so many things that have been sealed, if you will, with God's specific time lock and a specific signature that are now unfolding before our eyes. And we're going to talk about transhumanism. Transhumanism can be defined simply as men are going to transcend they were created by a living God, and through technology and through nanotechnology, robotics, and all of the what I would call supernatural information that has been dumped on humanity, they're going to be the promised ones in the book of Genesis when Satan said, ye shall be as gods. So with no further ado, I'm going to let Tom take it, and then we're going to go back and forth. First hour, we'll talk about transhumanism. We're going to talk about aliens tonight. We're going to talk about the Vatican and why all of the Vatican's interest in alien life forms. We're going to talk about whether it's the interplay between dimensions through stargates, the technology we have. And so, Tom, thank you and welcome, and I hope we can cover a lot of territory. This will be the equivalent, as I told you, of 8 hours of regular talk radio with no interruption.
Yeah, hey, Steve, great to be on the radio with you again. It's been, I think, at least a year since we did radio together, and thank you, Bruce, for allowing me to come on with Steve on Omega Man Radio.
It's an honor, and I didn't give an introduction because you gentlemen don't need introductions. Prolific authors and international radio host. It is yours, gentlemen. It's an honor.
Well, Steve, on this question, you said just launch out there into transhumanism. I have to say it's been the most incredible year, for me. If I had known that my house was going to burn to the ground or be burned to the ground in January of this year, there's no way I would have agreed the previous year to the very busy speaking schedule that I've had this year. And not only the speaking schedule, we're working on a documentary film project. We had quite a bit of film footage that was lost in that house fire together with all of our commercial equipment for the documentary film. So some of that we had to start over, but that's ongoing, not to mention trying to build a new house this year, traveling extensively to give presentations at, the Southwest Radio Church conferences twice this year, then to our own future Congress in Branson, Missouri in July, then to the Stealing the Mind conference in Denver, Colorado, and then to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where I spoke just 6 weeks ago at the Koinonia Institute, and then 2 days after that at the Strategic Perspectives Conference at the resort there. And by the way, I want to say that was my favorite presentation this year, and that one was recorded. We're going to play on syndicated television, I believe, in February sometime under the title The Hybrid Age. So people might want to watch for that, and we'll have the DVD with me and Chuck Missler on that probably in a few weeks at Raiders News Network. And, you know, during that period of time, Steve, you and I were exchanging emails, and I was telling you that I was so busy I didn't even know how I was going to keep up. Frankly, I don't know how I did everything. And then as soon as I got back, you know, then take off to Oklahoma, filming shows with Gary Stearman, then over to Southwest Radio Church, doing radio shows with Noah Hutchings. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say it's been a crazy year, Steve, but God has wanted this word out there. And the truth is, if I had known my house was going to burn, I would have never agreed to do all of those presentations. But now, in retrospect, looking back, I know that God was doing something even before the house burned. You know that old Joseph story where the enemy means something against you for evil, but God turns it around for good, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting, too, Tom, that you and I were in a conversation, I think the day or within, was it the same day your house burned down? And you were explaining to me the sounds you heard. And ladies and gentlemen, you can take this for what it's worth. Instantly, I said, Tom, and based on what I'm hearing the description, your house didn't burn down on its own. It was initiated. So I, for one, told Tom it's arson. The minute we talked on the phone, when I hung up, Tom immediately got a call from one of the legal guys in his county or whatever saying, well, the sound you heard, well, they could not have come up that quick with a response to what I had told Tom to try and cover someone's tracks. So, you know, by the grace of God, no one was hurt at Tom's. There was a great loss of research and reference material. But as you say, Tom, what they meant for evil, God meant for good. And we want to both thank all of you intercessors who have been praying for tonight. We want to thank you for those of you who cover our lives and our families' lives with prayer and intercession. It's a let's just say this, misstated sentence to say we are grateful beyond our ability to describe, and we praise God, and we thank you for being obedient. But, Tom, transhumanism has arrived so fast. It is my contention, and I know you and I have talked about this, that the more we talk about it, obviously the more flack we get, but we've actually forced their hands where they would have liked to have kept some things quiet. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know what's ironic is little by little the church, or at least some members of the church, and by that I mean the institution, are starting to awake to this issue or becoming interested in it. At all these different places where I've spoke this year, I've found out that there are numerous churches that are teaching, like the book Forbidden Gates, are using it for curriculum and teaching in their churches. I heard where one Assembly of God church got in trouble because they were teaching the book Forbidden Gates, and they all loved it when it was talking about spiritual warfare, but then as soon as they started reading the implications about how technology is going to play an exotic role in spiritual warfare, some of the students that are attending Bible college and majoring in certain areas of technology didn't like it, and so then all of a sudden it became a flack. But the thing is that, you know, the information, Steve, is getting out there. We're slowly but surely making headway. I just did a long interview with the UK Telegraph for a special edition on the year 2012 that also included information on transhumanism that will be coming out here pretty soon. I think you know that I spent several days, might have been as much as a week, consulting the conspiracy theory television producers for Jesse Ventura's new season of Conspiracy Theory that's coming out, and they're going to do a show on human-animal chimeras and transhumanism based on the information I gave them. I also introduced them to Professor William Hurlburt of Stanford University, who's part of the upcoming documentary on transhumanism, but he's part of the President's Council on Bioethics. He's a member of NASA's astrobiology team. That's quite an interesting combination, isn't it? But he's going to be in our film, but he told me that his sit-down with Jesse Ventura went really well. So we're Steve, my point is that we may not get it done through the church, but we're going to get it done one way or the other. And like Nita likes to say, I'm going up swinging. A lot of people, they use this old statement, I'm going to go down swinging, but Nita likes to say, I'm going up swinging. And that's what we do. That's what we've been doing. That's what we'll continue to do, because transhumanism is only one of several white-hot topics that I believe are the number one prophetic issues of our times.
Well, given the fact that transhumanism is the outplaying of Genesis 3:15, the enmity, and even before, where basically the desire to be God, you just carried a story, Tom, that I think most people have got to be made aware of, that the transhumanists, they will acknowledge the possibility of sentience. They'll in other words, a machine taking on self-awareness. But the most amazing story, that was one you just posted on Raiders, where they're talking about creating a God in their image, and then basically the God that a fallen man in his sin, but with his pride and arrogance, will give control to that entity of their making over their lives. Now, that's kind of interesting, because there is a direct admission that free will exists. In other words, they don't have to surrender to the artificial intelligence. They probably, in my opinion, your opinion, they're crazy to do so or demonically inspired. But let us make God in our image is their mantra, versus acknowledging the God of heaven who created us in his image. And I think that's one of the most amazing things that has come out. So the desire to create an artificial intellect, and give it godlike powers with, trying to be omnipresent, omniscient, and everything in the technological sense. Wow! I don't think the church, and I mean no disrespect, but 99%, I'm serious about this, of the pastors in America would probably need adult-shaped diapers if they started to address this, okay? They wouldn't be baby-shaped Kimbies, they'd be pulpit-present Kimbies. And there you go, somebody's got to come up with a new marketing gimmick there. But would you address that, please? Because the idea of a fallen man and the people who have denied in one way or another and lived their lives in denial, even it doesn't matter if it's Stephen Hawking, it doesn't matter if it's, good night, any of the most prominent people out there, Kurzweil, etc. The point is that that's an astonishing admission that the thing of free will exists. Now, how come to this point the Artilect just hasn't risen from some type of nanotechnology lab, built itself up, and destroyed all mankind? You know what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be facetious, yet poignant to the fact that these guys are willing to, in essence, destroy themselves to create something they have no guarantee or assurance will be what they claim it to be or want it to be.
Right. And that prophecy that you started out in Daniel actually, I think, has some implications towards technological advances. And unfortunately for mankind, the cultural shift that's now underway, what these transhumanists are talking about, the aspiration towards building an artificial intellect, a synthetic God, it forecasts a future that is going to be dominated by a species that is not going to be as benevolent as these guys are hoping that it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be superior to human in every way, according to all of the experts. But some of those experts, Hugo de Garis, the most famous among them, also believe that it's going to lead to an unfathomable war, Armageddon. Both a physical, and now they're slowly starting to admit that there's a spiritual aspect to this, a physical and spiritual war, and it's something that these pastors you're talking about, and a lot of other people, the world in general, is simply not prepared for. But I believe that even now, those synthetic forces that are plotting mankind's wholesale annihilation are under design. They're being designed right now in leading laboratories, public and private laboratories funded by the most advanced nations on earth, including the official government of the United States, France, Britain, Austria, China, who, as a result of advanced work in some of the stuff you mentioned a moment ago, nanotechnology, neurotechnology, molecular scale engineering, genetics, robotics, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, that strong artificial intelligence is going to unleash these artilects, and they're going to emerge from this research. And I'm one of those people who happen to believe that Kurzweil and Daguerre both are correct, that in my mind, if the Lord tarry, if time continue, and it may not, by the way, but if it does, I don't think we're too many years away, for that matter, maybe not even a year away, from a godlike, massively intelligent, artificial intelligence coming online that is trillions of times smarter than all the Einsteins that have ever existed put together. And the rise of this intelligence is going to profoundly disrupt human culture. Overnight, in one heartbeat, everything that everybody has ever thought they know about existence is going to stop, and the world is going to be brought to their knees, philosophically, ideologically, politically, and then, of course, you're going to have Daguerre's, contrast, where you've got this stark division between the people who want to unleash this intelligence upon humanity, give it that godlike status, or those who are opposed to it. And of course, if you read Daguerre's Artilect War, it's going to lead to gigadeath, literally the bloodiest battle in history, with billions of people dead before the end of the 21st century. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know, but I do believe that given enough time, and when I say given enough time, I'm not talking about hundreds of years, I'm talking relatively soon. Certainly, a strong artificial intelligence is going to come online, and after that, all bets are off.
Well, one of my concerns that I've written about extensively and I have warned about is that a lot of the entities that have been bound in the bowels of the earth, or if you will, in a magnetic containment chamber or electrogravitic or electromagnetic field, are being released as mankind in the, what I would say, fallen technology of the ancient ones are releasing these entities. You posted a story and I posted what you posted, and about the sun even having now strange principles. In other words, all the laws of physics are being upset, even to the point that radioactive decay, for instance, carbon-14 that used to be in dating, used in dating along with argon, potassium, and other methods, now they're finding out that the sun is affecting radioactive decay, the very, if you will, the very atoms of life, the atoms of energy. So, I believe it was Stan Dale that about 5 years ago on Coast to Coast made mention that there are now some unknown, and I believe that's what he said, are unknown energy particles coming from the sun. Well, my concern, Tom, and your concern, is the fact that demons or disembodied spirits, what happens when you get the epitome of idolatry, and let's call it techno-idolatry, and the technology that builds the beast, then you have the inhabitation of the beast. By the way, most people would probably say Stephen King was probably one of the first guys on the line with Christine about a spiritually possessed car that killed people. Well, the point that I'm trying to make is that there's something even in Revelation 13 that talks about the dragon giving power unto the beast, and so now we're at a position where you're going to have the technology of mankind coming into the realm of the supernatural or preternatural that has been hidden, or let's just even say chained, and when that becomes unleashed and unloosed, and as you were the one that years ago gave me the instruction on the gates of hell, and when that instruction came to me, wow, it launched me into a whole different if you will, alternate universe. The point is that now we've got the combination of the spiritual and the arrogance. That's total information awareness. DARPA Defense Advanced Research Project Agency and others, they want total information awareness so that they can have that in their mind, that, and I'll call it fallen angel knowledge, and so that they can basically have control. Knowledge equals control. So in essence, what the Babylonians did, or Babel, on the town, some people pronounce it Babel, I pronounce it Babel, but the point is that what they were trying to do on the plains of Shinar, now they're doing in the laboratories, and what's going to come out is going to eclipse anything. I mean, the days that we are facing now, I think you just basically articulated it, are so dramatically and traumatic radically different than anything we've ever known. And I think that that's what God wants to do. He says his people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Please, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are just hearing this for the first time, take this to the Lord in prayer. And if you don't believe that there's a God, say, God, if you're really real, is this stuff real? Because you might be surprised how God answers prayers and who he answers them for, and the answer to that is anybody who honestly asks him. So, Tom, don't you find it interesting that just as in the plains of Shinar or the Tower of Babel, now we've got, in essence, every laboratory in the world in special compartmentalized intelligence working on the grand scheme of death. People used to say to me all the time, I'm sure they did to you in your Assembly of God pastor days, and when I first came into the Assembly of God almost 40 years ago, they just couldn't factor in how that many people could die. You take a third, and then you take a third of the living, and obviously by the time if there's 8 billion people on the planet, you're going to come up with a lot of dead people in the billions. So what you just articulated actually facilitates that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how all of these, the thing that always startles me is how the secular scientists, Hugo being one of them, but he's just one of them. You might remember in the 90s, a lot of the critical thinking about the timing of the singularity and the emergence of strong artificial intelligence and what that would lead to, it was Werner Vinge, you remember?
Yes,
and,
I
do. He gave his famous lecture, The Coming Technological Singularity, but if you read it, what he says is that science will soon have the technological means to create superhuman intelligence, and right afterward, he says, the human era will be ended, period. And so it's amazing how many of these scientists, many of whom are even dedicated to bringing about the creation of strong artificial intelligence, also admit that 1 second after this intelligence becomes, a person, an individual, a god, it may decide that, we're not anything more than pests, and that it will immediately set out to destroy all of humanity or to defend itself, basically Terminator technology. Now, I want to add that concerning this near future interface with computer intelligence system, I think that it's going to happen also because there is an unseen hand that's at work. So I point to these leaders in technology and that they're working towards these goals in these laboratories, but you and I both know that there's an unseen intelligence that is operating behind that scene.
Well,
I thought I heard a commercial coming on.
Yeah, and I think, no, we don't have a commercial until the top of the hour, okay? We're going to take one at 8 o'clock Mountain, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and then 5 minutes. But now, you remember, too, Bill Joy's article, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us Anymore?
Right.
I think that was the seminal piece, Bill Joy, founder of Sun Microsystems. And the thing that's fascinating to me is that the men and women who almost are, and these are my words, okay, SQ's words, in their zombie-like gaze that are working so wholeheartedly in thinking or being deceived, that somehow they're going to build a better human being, that 90% of even that budget goes to either super soldiers, in other words, genetically and electro-robotically enhanced warriors, and it's going to war machines that are controlled by the mind, if you will, the electro-neural that's going to control all weapon systems. So if this is all, let's just say this, happy, joy, this is not Ren and Stimpy doing the end times. This is absolutely some of the most deadly and diabolical war machines being integrated into the composite whole. And what's really tragic is the realm of spiritual machines. And by spiritual, I want to define that different than obviously Kurzweil or Daguerre or any of those guys. I'm talking about supernatural entities from antiquity that have been bound for a time. And now that the time is upon us, when the angel in the book of Revelation says, and the mystery of time will be no more, now you're going to have, if you will, I don't know a good word, but you're going to have robotic people cores, kind of like intercourse, but the people are going to be used up until they realize they've been had, and at the time they understand they've been had, it's too late. So it's Skynet on steroids. Skynet was the robotic control mechanism for the Terminator. But even beyond that, it is the malevolent hate for mankind. And I think if you think in terms of opposites, mankind is such an amazing creation that what is man that thou art mindful of him is what the psalmist asks. Yet obviously, how is it that the devil hates mankind so much? Obviously, mankind has something that nothing else in the universe has. I'm not saying there's nothing else in the universe. I'm just saying created in the image and restored through the likeness of God through Jesus and his redemption. But the point is that the contempt for mankind is being echoed in every scientific paper I see. In other words, if they really could say in an Al Pacino-like character, God's an absentee landlord and he doesn't care anymore, what they're trying to do is basically take everything that he started with, that he created, and turn it against him. And I think it's fascinating that even the word of the psalmist says that God takes the wicked in their own devices, okay? It doesn't say plots and schemes. That's part of it, but devices. A device, even in the language of the original, means that's something that is created. It is something that is manufactured. And when I started to see that, I started to see, wow, you covered it extensively in your writing. I obviously talk about when I speak on talk radio, but we're seeing now, Tom, this thing's speeding up at beyond the speed of light. Remember when we were told there's nothing faster than the speed of light? And somebody said the word wormhole, and that just threw that out. When someone said stargates weren't real, and then you find out that the military has been appropriating and using, and obviously I am under the impression, and I would say this, no, emphatically that they exist. And the thing is that we're now there where everything that used to be future tense is present now. So therefore, as the time is speeded up for the elect's sake, wow, isn't it almost in your world too a moment by moment unfolding of something new almost every single breath you take?
Yeah, it's exponential. In fact, it's to the point where, like Raiders News Update and resources like that, we really can't. We have to pick and choose the news every day. We can't even keep up with how quickly prophecy is unfolding all around us. And, of course, my interest in particular is the technological aspect. And you said something a moment ago, Steve, that really stuck with me. I can't repeat exactly how you said it, but you said that people are going to be integrated with technology until they lose themselves in it. In other words, they don't even know that they're being lost to it until it's too late. And something like that's what you said. And what strikes me about that is how you have cyborgists like Kevin Warwick, who's the professor of cybernetics at Reading University in England, talking about the same thing, talking about how the human era is not so much going to just immediately or in one day end as a result of singularity, as it's being assimilated right now, like the Borg of Star Trek fame, and people aren't even aware of it. We are being assimilated with machine intelligence. We have become. Remember Ted Kaczynski, and he wrote his paper talking about how we will slowly become dependent on this technology until eventually the technology will own us. Well, scientists like that, they see the singularity. There's two worldviews, in other words. There's the Kurzweil type singularitarian, but then there's the cyborgists, and they see the singularity occurring not as a result of an overnight freestanding independent machine, but they see it happening inside human cyborgs, where human-machine integration continues to happen and is realized until eventually enhanced biology is recombined to include our brains, brain-machine interfaced, cybernetic constructs, which we still think of as people, but now we're talking about near future people who are machine readable. They're interfaced with artificial neural networks. They're transhuman in that sense, but they have amplified intelligence, where their brains are connected to artificial intelligence systems until finally that new form of humanity becomes a hive, superior biological counterpart to humans, and something that's completely incomprehensible. So, in other words, what you said a moment ago really strikes out at me, that this spiritual aspect how much does the Bible have to say about the mind and the need to protect the mind? And yet when you look at all of the advances in technology right now, the lion's share of it is being targeted towards brain-machine or mind-machine interfacing. And the thing is that most people don't realize the spiritual ramifications of this, the gateways into the mind, the gateways into the brain, into the spirit, through integrating themselves with systems that they can't possibly comprehend how it is going to put them in contact with other kinds of intelligence. And that's what I was going to say a moment ago about there's something there that is whispering in the back of the minds of these individuals. I can't help in the Art-elect war. I know I rambled a little bit here. I'm sorry, but I can't help.
No, you're not rambling. No, you're making perfect sense.
In the Art-elect war, where Hugo de Garis is talking about how he's dedicated his entire adult life. Until recently, he was the head of the Zion University Research Center for Developing Artificial Brains. He's completely, and furthermore, he's an atheist. He's completely dedicated to the creation of strong artificial intelligence. But if you read his book and how he talks about how he goes to bed at night having these euphoric feelings about this great, majestic, synthetic God they're about to create, but then in the middle of the night he'll be shocked out of his sleep, sweating, having these horrific nightmares where he sees all of humanity floating in a sea of blood. And you can't read his book and not realize that here is a man who is tortured. He is a tortured soul because he's dedicated to doing something that somewhere deep down in his spirit there is a prophetic voice that is telling him that he is leading mankind towards a technological Armageddon.
And I think that, again, there were so many misapplications where people didn't understand when Jesus said that except the days be short and there be no flesh left alive, the image and likeness of God, the contempt that the devil has for mankind. Let me give you a good example of the hive. I have been against Facebook, I've been against Twitter, and I'm totally against the social network, but I see the hive already being integrated. For people that don't understand this, the whole concept of those social networking sites is nothing more than a hive. What I mean by that, the artificial intelligence programs and all of the algorithms, the mathematical formulas that they've tried to define humanity, the mind, the neuroscientists, the neurobiologists, what people don't understand, Tom, is they already are linked and they are what I call webified, okay? I don't mean just because they're on their internet, but just as a spider web, every strand ultimately goes to the spider. Every strand ultimately goes to this network, and for instance, every emotion that's detailed, like let's say John Doe, I'll just make up fake names because invariably I'll call somebody out and they'll send me a nasty email, but John Doe, if you really exist, or Mary Special, I'm sorry, I'm just making your names up, but they'll invariably start to spill their guts, if you will, okay? And out of the abundance of the mouth, the heart speaks. So every time you post an emotional, I got mad at my dad tonight because he did this, or blah, 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 whatever thoughts and the intents of their heart that they verbalize and actualize putting into an electronic medium, you must know you are being cataloged, you are being algorized. There's a good word. Algorized is kind of like techno-rape. But the point that I'm trying to get is, Tom, this is what we see playing out before us. In other words, individuality and uniqueness and if you will, the word free, which is only so long in existence. The most vanishing thing I know is a species. It's the English language that used to define what America used to be like. But what's fascinating to me is the desire to basically be part of the whole and have the whole make your thinking and make your thoughts, basically tell you what to do. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing, like tonight, I went out before the show and I grabbed a quick bite with my wife at one of the restaurants, and I promise you, just between going into the restaurant and watching the restaurant, there must have been 30 people sitting together and on their email, text mailing, or text messaging, okay? When I went down my street, I call it the Avenue of the Morons. We have this highway that I have to go into town on, and invariably, it's a 60-mile-an-hour zone. People are driving 20, texting. But what fascinated me tonight, obviously I knew we were going to talk about this stuff, but I just said under my breath, this really is the Borg. Now, again, we just heard, you posted the story too, I think, about Twitter. Every tweet, is being cataloged by the federal government. Every communication, every email. I mean, I'm sure that they have every multiple personality disorder, calculated and quantified. But the hive mentality now is, or groupthink, and Mackey's book, the madness of the psychology of madness of mobs. I've read excerpts of it over the years, but the point being is that wonderful free will, that choosing an identity is being assimilated. And what was the Borg's ultimate threat to the Star Trekkies? You will be assimilated.
Yeah, that's
it's happening, my brother.
And let me explain something, because I'm sitting here listening to both of us. I realize there might be people out there that don't even know what we mean by brain-machine interfacing. So let me just, in just a few words here, explain brain-machine interfacing and how this might carry spiritual, in fact, potentially prophetic, and I do believe it does carry prophetic, implications for the near future. First of all, a lot of diligence has been given over the last 20 years within military science to decode the neural processes of the mind. If somebody doesn't know what that means, that's just the electrical firing in the brain that follows a very specific language pattern. Those electrical impulses mean something, and they are repeatable. They're analogous to machine code, digital computer code. But in the brain, the neural code, this is the software, the rules, the syntax. You used the term a moment ago, algorithms. Algorithms have been developed by the military in order to interpret the electrical pulses in the brain and what they mean. Sometimes they mean perceptions. People that are listening to the show right now, they're thinking various thoughts. They're thinking Tom Horn's crazy. They're thinking Steve Quayle should throw Tom Horn off this radio program. Whatever it is they're thinking, those are following very repeatable, precise, though very complex electrical patterns. Basically, that's the neural code. Now, the military has thought for a very long time that if they could break down that neural code, come to understand it, break it down into computer language, strings of ones and zeros, and then be able to broadcast it into remote systems, into a receiver, a computer system, where it then can be reinterpreted as precise language, well, then, of course, we would have ultimate power over our psyche, because we'd be able to monitor, manipulate brain cells with precision by speaking to them in their own private language. Well, researchers have made amazing progress in this in the last decade, but specifically the last 24 months. And I won't even go into this. We could talk about over at YouTube, where you can watch the racist monkey that's got a chip implanted in the hippocampus of its brain with a bunch of wires, and the monkey learns how to control a computer cursor. But that's really old technology now. This stuff's moving along an exponential curve. We went from crude intracranial BMI chips to extracranial, first of all, neural caps that you could wear that could extracranially read the neuron pulses of the brain. Now just little tiny devices. In fact, last Christmas they started selling toys that kids could buy that would allow them to put a headset that looks like a stereo headset on their head that reads the neuron pulses of the brain extracranially, and by thought alone, the kids learn how to control the game systems. And of course, now, in the last 4 or 5 months, we've heard about all kinds of stuff, televisions that'll be brain controlled in the near future. If we're not already big, fat enough couch potato-y people, Steve, we're going to be able just to sit and think, and change the channels on our televisions. But the new smartphones that'll be out within the next 24 months, where you'll just think, call mom. So this integration that you're talking about as you're driving into town and you're thinking, man, it's already here. It really is. And what's happening is people are becoming addicted to it. They're becoming enslaved by it. And soon they won't know how to function without it. And this has happened as a result of military investment into the technology that has crafted these microelectrodes that can eavesdrop now on hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, whatever there are, of the separate neurons simultaneously in our brains, and they've developed the computers, the algorithms to analyze that and develop the computer code. Well, it's been the National Institute of Health, and it's been DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, that's pumped millions of dollars into this for the last 20 years. Why? Because if you read their own budgets, their own reports, some of the stuff you and I have talked about in the past, it's because they've imagined cyborg warriors, first of all, but then just this will spread into the broader cultural realities, and it'll just be people downloading basically complex fighting procedures directly into their brain, just like in the Matrix, controlling jets with thoughts. I read a report, Steve, from the University of Chicago, where right now in Afghanistan we're testing a device no bigger than a Bluetooth that a soldier can wear above their ear that will allow them to control these robotic drones. And in the very near future, what it's going to lead to, according to this report, is a synthetic form of telepathy, where soldiers will be able to communicate one with each other by thought alone, but also a synthetic form of telekinesis, where they'll be able to control robotic warfighting machines by thought alone. And you saw the helmets with big screens in front of their eyes that provide a panoramic view remotely of the battlefield, where the drone is flying over a battlefield and a soldier somewhere wearing a helmet can see the battlefield and by thought alone tell the drone to drop its payload or take pictures or send it on a reconnaissance mission or whatever it is. So over the last year, I mean, major breakthroughs now have been accomplished, and now what appears to be synthetic forms of telepathy, telekinesis, neural brain reading systems, but all of this ultimately is leading towards robotic war machines, not just for foreign battlefield domination, but for domestic battlefield domination, if you know what I mean.
Well, absolutely.
And I want to say just one more thing, and then I'll shut up. Sharon Gilbert, she on her blog recently pointed out something that I want to share with you, because I don't know if you saw it, but I thought it was phenomenal, and it had to do with the Greek word phobotron. Now, here's what Sharon said. She had been reading Luke chapter 21. She's doing a read through the Bible in a year thing, and she was at Luke 21. And here's what she read. Luke 21:10. She was reading this in the ESV, and it says, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and pestilence, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven," end quote. And here's what Sharon said. She became curious about the Greek word translated there, terrors. There will be terrors and great signs from heaven, and she wanted to know what that Greek word terrors meant. So she looked it up, and it is the Greek word phobotron, and according to Strong's, phobotron implies that which causes terror or fright. It comes from the root word phobio, which we derive our English word phobia from, that whatever causes fear, something that instills either great respect or reverence, but awe and amazement or fear, and we run for our lives, right? Sharon was struck, though, by the end of this Greek word, tron, phobotron, because we automatically think of a machine when we hear or read a tron ending. Electron, neutron, cyclotron, magnetron, cosmotron, dynatron, even the movie Tron, right? They all speak to scientifically developed machines of high intelligence and design computerized machines. Well, Sharon wanted to know if it was possible that phobotron in the Greek language or in the Bible implied one or both of two possible options. One, a rise of terrorism, because this is what the text says, terrors and great signs from there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. So a rise of terrorism across the globe that hurls mankind into seemingly endless war, but two, a rise of intelligent and even sentient computers that may or may not be mixed with human components, leading to the creation of a most terrifying machine that would then cause people to stand in awe while also causing them to flee for their very lives. And here's what Sharon writes, and then with this I'll just let it go, but I thought this was so good. Quote, Phobotron only appears in the Bible once, just once. Luke is the only one whom the Holy Spirit inspired to use this curious word, one small word that may imply many horrendous events yet to come, the rise of machines, a singularity of sorts. Think of this the next time you use an ATM with its winking camera eye fixed upon you, or whenever you read of our police departments using unmanned aerial vehicles to patrol cities, some of them capable of carrying offensive weaponry. Think of it the next time you watch the movie Terminator. Phobotron, you know, if I wanted to be very speculative, then I might also mention flying machines as a source of terror, and I would connect this sight from the phrase that follows it, great signs from heaven. From heaven, question mark, not in heaven, but from heaven, end quote. I thought that was just one of the most spectacular things, and certainly contributes, Steve, to the research that you and I have done into this idea that there is this spiritual dynamic that is leading mankind towards a technological Armageddon.
Well, I want to share something, Tom. I think that, again, Solomon, the wisest man in the world, the promise to God, there'd be no man equal to him from that point on. But obviously, Solomon didn't realize God never promised him wisdom greater than the fallen angels or the demons or the principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness, the archons, etc. But he said there's nothing new under the sun. I can tell you from close to 40 years of research, and I mean, I don't know how many footnotes you have to put into a book before people realize that what some people do with their spare time isn't out doing what everybody else is doing. You dig through manuscripts. I do what I can do as fast as I can do it because I know our time. But getting back to the subject at hand, there are so many indications that the spiritual realm is of primary importance, and that nothing new under the sun, whether it is the Vedic, the Indian from the continent of India, the Vedic text, the Mahabharata, the Vimrayana, all of the different writings talking about a technology that was so ancient. I can tell you from military people who I have talked to and intelligence agents, and even the where most people think we are in our space program, that's nothing. The number one thing everybody wants to control is the ancient technology and the ancient weapons. It doesn't matter if it's Gilgamesh. You and I will be talking the next hour about that Nimrod began to become Gibborim, the mark of the beast. We're going to get into the mark of the beast because if it's a technological or a nano implant that actually changes the DNA of a human being, once they willingly take it, then obviously they're damned. They cannot be saved. And that whole mutagenic nature of electronics, or not even, the word electronics isn't accurate, okay? The different electromagnetic and electrofrequency weapons and all of the, if you will, all of the devices, that's a good word, it's a biblical word, I'll use it, that are designed to, number one, either destroy or transform. And I don't think people understand. You and I do. We write about it. We've written it fictionally, and we've written it in reference material. But the whole idea of building a super soldier, of taking the genes from the giants, the Hercules genes, that's what they've named it, whether they call it human growth factor, this or that, the intelligence of this, the eyesight of this, of an eagle, for instance, the rear hindquarters of a leopard, integrating that into the human genome and it's to make something that is so, and I say this, diabolically wicked, absolutely reprehensible to the God of heaven who set barriers, and he created everything after his kind and likeness. Every single barrier that the living God had declared to be an outgrowth of his creative genius and love is now being transcended. So what we're going to have to come to grips with is it's not enough to basically kill all mankind, but to do away with mankind and then to come up with something. You call them, replacements, and I'm not even talking about those guys, the transhumanists and the singularity people, calling what they're calling. I'm talking about such abhorrent creatures that even when they were killed prior to the flood, and in, I believe, obviously, in Jeremiah's flood, which preceded the Noah flood, that obviously that which had been genetically altered, manipulated, and formulated in a laboratory was so disgustingly virulent in the sight and the nostrils of the living God that he had to wipe it all out. And now all that stuff, the fragmentary, whether it's a mammoth and bone marrow or it's Gilgamesh's bone marrow, the idea of reanimation of these things, these entities that were destroyed by God and by his angels for our safety. Now the very people that are wanting to reanimate, rebring back, and are, in my opinion, are absolutely so incensed by the powers that drive them, the evil spiritual force, that they're willing to wipe out, as they've said in their own writings, 9/10 of humanity, and they somehow will become the gods who live forever. They never have to worry. They're all knowledgeable, all powerful. Oh, no, by the way, let's not forget they're building sex bots. In other words, it's some form of animal-human hybrid that basically can pleasure them. I mean, these are absolutely the things that the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and so many of the pseudepigraphal texts said were so disgusting in the eyes of a living God that he had to destroy everything that was on the earth, save Noah and his family the second time because they were of pure genetic stock and pure Adamic stock. So, I think that we're there, Tom, and I don't think anymore. We cannot even say that prophecy is going to be fulfilled. I don't know anything outside of, specific time-sensitive prophecies that aren't happening because we are in the days of Noah, the spirit of lawlessness. How about lawlessness? We have the leading men in our government who are supposed to set the standards for law saying, well, it's not a lie if you don't think it's a lie. Boy, fulfilled prophecy has come to pass. I once said that in America the day will come when the truth will be defined as a lie. One man swears to the lie and everybody else says amen to the liar. I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Well, of course, this is one of the reasons why I decided to publish you mentioned the Book of Enoch and all these various ancient texts, and that's why I decided to publish the Researcher's Library, which we can talk about in the next hour or some hour, or we don't have to talk about it all.
We'll talk about it in the next hour, because if you don't mind, that's where I'd like to go in the next hour. All the genetic manipulations and the chimeras and the mythological creatures that aren't mythological, the desire, and I want to specifically, when we come back, we'll take our break right now. Is that okay, Bruce?
Absolutely.
We'll take a break. Take a 5-minute break.
I would like both of you to give out your contact information, websites, and tell each of the listeners out there what is your most recent book that is available.
Go ahead, Tom.
Let's see. Most recent book available is the Researcher's Library of Ancient Texts, and of course people can contact me through the website RaidersNewsUpdate.com.
All right, awesome. You've written 8 to 10 books or so, haven't you, Tom?
I think I have. Steve asked me that question earlier, and frankly, I've never thought about it.
Are those books also available over at the same website? Give that out again, please.
Yeah, RaidersNewsUpdate.com. And by the way, just this week we started releasing books also in e-format, so there you can go to Kindle. If they want to go to Raiders News Update, they'll see a link there for it, but they can click on it and look at some of the books that were released this week that they could get for their digital readers.
Do you also have an order telephone number that they can call?
It's on SurvivorMall.com. If they go to SurvivorMall.com, just pull the page down. There's a phone number down on the bottom of it.
All right. And, Steve, give out your contact information and tell people about the books that you have available right now.
Well, everything's on the website. My website's Steve Quayle, QUAYLE.com. You go on that, you click on the big Q. if you want to go to the daily news updates and all of the warnings, alerts, and then my Giants reference, I think, is now up to 10,000 pages, and I would encourage people to download a lot of the illustrations. Again, I have one of the finest illustrators in the world, Brian Snowdy, does a lot of graphic novel stuff that has taken eyewitness reports and briefings given to me, and I sketched them out in such marvelous manner. I've got photographs of the Giants, but my newest book is the one I really want people to get at all cost. It's called Angel Wars. It's been the best-selling book I've ever had. The Prophecy in the News people, Bob Ulrich, has told me it's just basically blowing a lot of people's minds, and I have to thank Tom for introducing me to Bob. But I think that it's critical that people understand that even though you've got the Internet, it's really nice to have the hardcore books. My Apollyon, Rising 2012, it has been given away to so many people, and now I demand they give it back or give it away. But
yes.
But the thing is that we've given so much in so many years of research, and seriously, I don't know, Tom, and I know this, but I can't recall it. How many years has it been since the Lord launched you on writing about this stuff? Because you and I met, almost 10 years ago?
Yeah, 10 years ago. I've been in full-time ministry for probably 32 years now, and it's been at least a decade ago when I first met you, and then, of course, I pastored for over 20 years.
Well, and again, so ladies and gentlemen, what we're trying to share with you is this. Listen, I want to make something clear. This is our calling, and our calling has been to warn, to prepare, to inform, to undergird you with the references from the Word of God, and then also, as I read Daniel chapter 12, the stuff you are now seeing has been hidden for the ages. It's opening up before you. And so what we're trying to do is equip the saints, because most people are ill-equipped to deal with the stresses of this. And when we get into the next hour and we start talking about what they've already created in the labs and some of the most obscene, and I mean obscene, dangerous, malevolent creature/its, okay? The bottom line is you're going to understand that when God said He gives us power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, what a fabulous, marvelous, quantum-cutting, galaxy-crushing statement that is, because in essence, at the end of this show, we want everybody to know, fear not, because Jesus has given everyone who will call upon His name power over all that stuff. And I think that's the exciting news, and that's why we're going to open up in the final hour for questions. And please, when you email Bruce questions, make them as clear as you can and ask, clear as you can. I don't know when it all ends. You don't need to send that question. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 90 days, but I'm telling you, God is going to give you warning, and He's given us fair warning, and by the grace of God, I'm privileged to talk to Tom. The series that Tom and I did, Tom, what was the title of our series? Was it Stargates, the last one we did?
I don't know.
4-hour one?
I can tell you the all-time best-selling series that the most requested series you and I ever did is the one that's called The Days of Noah.
Yeah, okay, and forgive me, but again, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, with the fact that this room is filled up, I can speak for myself. I believe I've talked to Tom about this too, but people are taking these things, and this is the goodness of God, which leads them into repentance, because we're not afraid to answer the tough questions. You ask the average pulpit personality, or what I call pirates in the pulpit. There's some wonderful men of God in the pulpits, but the ones that aren't, to deal with this stuff, and they'll kick you out or have their ushers show you the door. But there are people who have genuine hunger, and I can tell you this, Tom, you and I have said this on the air, but I still like to reiterate it. Usually I find that the people who are used by the Lord the most are the ones that get kicked out of man's kingdom and welcome into His. So I wear the boot of fellowship on my rear end. I wear it smilingly. Well, Bruce, let's take a break.
Praise
so
God.
Tom can do it, and I can.
Absolutely.
We can both take a 5 minute.
We're going to take about a 6-7 minute break, folks. And for those just tuning in, this is a live broadcast. This is episode 502 of Omega Man Radio. Special guest tonight, Steve Quayle and Tom Horn. We're talking about transhumanism, 666, the mark of the beast, and fallen angels. And we'll be taking your question tonight at the end of the show. If you have a question, email it to me as succinctly as you can at omegamanradio@yahoo.com. Last comment I'll make is if you can't get into the main chat room, it's full right now, go to omegamanradio.com. We've got a second one running. With that, we'll be back in about 6 minutes. Here we go.